He thought the pain would paralyze you. He thought the heartbreak would be your downfall. He thought once he left, you'd crumble, fall apart, and never rise again. Because in his mind, you were dependent on his presence to find purpose. But here's the truth. You were never meant to stay broken. The pain wasn't sent to destroy you. It was sent to awaken you, to stretch you, to show you the parts of yourself that you forgot existed. Sometimes we don't understand how deep our strength runs until we're forced to walk alone. When he walked away, you were left with the silence, the confusion, the aching questions. Why wasn't I enough? What did I do wrong? But that silence wasn't empty. It was full of answers, full of truth, full of the opportunity to finally hear yourself again. And in that moment of loneliness, something powerful began to happen. You started to heal. Not overnight, not easily. It came with tears, late nights, and days when you almost texted him again, but you didn't. Because something inside of you was changing. You realized you didn't need closure from him. You needed connection with yourself. And that shift right there, that was the beginning of your comeback. Not because you had a plan, not because you wanted revenge, but because your spirit remembered who you are. You see, healing doesn't mean you forget the pain. It means you stop letting it define you. You stop letting what he did write the rest of your story. And that's what he didn't see coming. He expected you to stay stuck, to keep checking his page, to sit around hoping he'd call. But instead, you went inward. You started growing. You started praying. You started showing up for yourself. You built strength in silence. You stopped performing for attention. You found beauty in your solitude. And that's when the healing became visible. It wasn't just emotional. It showed in your energy, your eyes, your peace. And now, whether he admits it or not, he feels that shift. He sees it. He knows you're not the same person he left, because you were never meant to stay broken. Mm, 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 mm. Pain is temporary, but purpose is permanent. So don't let that heartbreak lie to you. Don't let that silence make you think you're alone. You're in a divine process. You're being rebuilt stronger, wiser, more powerful. And when you rise, and you will, he'll know exactly what he lost. You're not broken, you're becoming. There's a moment in every healing journey when you realize a version of you that loved him wasn't your final form. That woman, the one who gave everything, forgave everything, tolerated the disrespect, and swallowed her voice just to keep the peace. She was strong, but she was still learning. She hadn't yet discovered her worth. And now that you've stepped away, now that the noise of that relationship is quieted, you can hear what was always trying to speak to you, your power, your value, your truth. He didn't expect you to evolve. He thought the chapter with him would be your best story. But here you are, writing new pages without him, and they are deeper, richer, and more real than anything he ever offered. Because now, you're not choosing from a place of pain. You're choosing from a place of clarity. You're not begging to be seen anymore. You've become someone who sees herself, honors herself, and refuses to settle for half love. This transformation wasn't about proving him wrong. It was about proving to yourself that you were always more than what he made you feel. You don't need him to validate your worth. You've done that yourself. And that self-recognition, that's magnetic. It's what makes him start questioning everything. He starts to think about the way you smiled, the way you loved without conditions, the way you held space, even when it cost you peace. But now he realizes all of that wasn't a given, it was a gift. And here's the twist. Once you stop chasing, you start attracting. Once you stop texting, checking, waiting, hoping, you shift the energy. You go from needing his attention to commanding his respect. Because you stepped into something rare, self-possession. And a woman who owns her silence, her time, her growth, she becomes unforgettable. Not because she's loud, but because she's steady, because she's moved on, not with bitterness, but with brilliance. He starts to wonder, what if I had appreciated her? What if I had shown up instead of making excuses? But those questions are his to wrestle with now. Your job isn't to revisit the past. It's to honor the woman you've become in spite of it. That version of you, grounded, glowing, growing, is not going backward. You're not shrinking again to fit into places that couldn't hold your light. So let him sit with his regrets. Let him watch from a distance as you bloom in ways he never imagined. You've outgrown the old story. Now it's time to write one where you are the hero. Not the one waiting to be rescued, but the one who rescued herself. Keep rising. Here's something powerful that happens when you stop explaining your healing to the very person who broke you. When you no longer feel the need to prove that you're okay, that you've moved on, that you've grown, because silence isn't just the absence of words, it's the presence of strength. And that silence, it's louder than any text you could send, any story you could post, any tears you could shed. Silence tells the truth without begging to be understood. You see, he didn't expect you to go quiet. He didn't expect you to stop reaching out, checking in, or waiting for closure. He thought you'd always be there. He counted on your emotional loyalty. He thought your heart would keep the door open just in case. But what he didn't know is that your silence wasn't empty. It was full of lessons, full of boundaries, full of the realization that the healing didn't need his permission. That moment you stopped responding wasn't passive. It was intentional. It was you choosing your peace over the cycle, choosing dignity over desperation, choosing to take your energy back and reinvest it in yourself. Because closure isn't something you wait to receive from someone who wounded you. Closure is something you create when you choose yourself over and over again without apology. And while you've been silent, he's been thinking. Because here's the truth. Men hear silence louder than shouting when the calls stop, when the messages go unanswered, when the presence that once filled his world suddenly disappears. He notices. He begins to wonder if you really moved on. He questions whether someone else now occupies the space he once took for granted. And that uncertainty, it lingers. It haunts him because he lost something that was once so sure of him, so consistent, so deeply giving. But your silence isn't about playing games. It's about reclaiming power. It's about creating space for your soul to breathe, to mend, to rebuild. Because you cannot heal in the same environment that made you bleed. You can't grow in soil that choked your roots. So you step back, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. You knew that in order to truly rise, you had to be still. You had to let the noise fade so you could finally hear your own voice again. And now, you're not just surviving. You're rebuilding, quietly, intentionally, without needing him to see, to notice, to applaud. Your silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. It's sacred. It's you saying, I don't need to prove anything to anyone who didn't value me when I was giving everything. And that, right there, is the shift. That's the power. Because now, the version of you he remembers doesn't even exist anymore. You've evolved beyond her. Let the silence speak. Let it echo through the places where you used to overextend yourself. Let it remind him that peace is louder than pain, and healing doesn't ask for attention. You just keep walking forward, quietly, gracefully, and let your growth do the talking. There's a certain kind of strength that doesn't make noise. It doesn't scream or announce itself. It just shows up, calm, steady, unshaken. That's the strength that comes when you finally start choosing peace over chaos, when you stop chasing after someone who made you feel like you had to earn their love, when you no longer tie your worth to someone else's inconsistency. That's when you start healing, and that's when he starts noticing See, he didn't expect you to find peace without him. He thought your peace depended on his presence. He assumed that you'd stay wrapped in the same cycle of overthinking, waiting, wondering, that you'd always be one text away, one memory away, one weak moment away from falling back into the familiar. But something shifted inside you. Something clicked. When you finally realize that peace is not a gift someone else gives you, it's something you claim when you stop letting chaos have access to your life. And that kind of peace, it's disruptive to someone who once controlled your emotions. When you're no longer reactive, when you're no longer explaining yourself, defending your boundaries, or trying to be understood, that unsettles people, especially the ones who were comfortable with your emotional vulnerability, because now they're left in the silence they never expected. And they start wondering, how did she get so calm, so detached, so free? You got there by choosing yourself, by waking up one day and saying, I deserve better than confusion. I deserve better than half effort. I deserve better than someone who only values me when I pull away. And then you followed that declaration with action. You stopped answering late night calls. You stopped showing up emotionally when they never showed up for you. You stopped hoping that one day they would change, and you started changing the only thing you could, yourself. And here's the beautiful thing about peace. It glows. It radiates. People feel it before they even see it. It's in your posture, your presence, your energy. It's in the way you walk into a room without needing to be seen. It's in the way you speak with certainty and grace without over-explaining yourself. And now, without saying a word, you've said everything. You've communicated that your healing is not a performance. It's real, it's rooted, and it's permanent. And when he sees you now, he doesn't just see a woman who moved on. He sees a woman who evolved, who grew, who reclaimed her story without asking for a co-author. And that realization, it stings. Because he didn't think you could find this kind of wholeness without him. He thought your light came from his presence. But now he sees it was always in you. So stay peaceful, stay still, stay grounded. Because your silence, your distance, your peace, it's doing more work than any confrontation ever could. You don't have to prove anything. Your glow speaks loud enough. Healing quietly while becoming unrecognizable is one of the most powerful transformations a person can go through. You see, the version of you he knew, the version that tolerated the disrespect, that accepted the bare minimum, that stayed up late hoping for a text or trying to fix what was never yours to fix, she's gone. And not because she wanted revenge or wanted to prove something. She simply evolved. When someone doesn't expect you to heal, it's because they believe your identity is tied to the pain they caused. They assume the damage they did left you stuck, spinning, waiting for closure. But you didn't stay stuck. You didn't wait for him to change. You didn't beg for an apology. You made a decision to be done, to let go of the idea that love has to be painful to be real. And from that decision, you started changing. Not loudly, not with announcements or declarations. You just started showing up differently for yourself. And the healing, it wasn't perfect. It came with setbacks, with quiet tears and lonely nights. But in that space, something inside you hardened, not in a bitter way, but in a beautiful way. You started guarding your energy. You started listening to yourself. You started walking with intention. No longer apologizing for your strength or your silence, and without even trying to prove anything, you became unrecognizable to the person who once thought they knew you. Now he watches from a distance, maybe through mutual friends, maybe through your social media, maybe just through the silence. And he doesn't recognize what he sees. Not because you changed your hair or your clothes, but because you changed your spirit. The woman who used to shrink herself to keep the peace now walks in truth. The woman who once chased now attracts. The woman who tolerated now chooses. And that's confusing to someone who thought they had you figured out. Let me tell you, there's power in mystery. There's power in no longer being readable. He expected the old you to show up. He expected the same emotional response, the same vulnerability, the same availability. But now, every time he looks for the version of you he once had access to, he meets silence. He meets boundaries. He meets a woman who has rewritten her identity, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. And what he doesn't realize is that in losing you, he didn't just lose a partner, he lost a safe place. He lost someone who once saw him in a way he couldn't even see himself. And you found yourself. You became whole, not because he came back to fix what he broke, but because you chose to stop bleeding over someone who never handed you a bandage. So let him be confused. Let him wonder. You owe no one a version of yourself that you've outgrown. You owe no one access to the healed, evolved, radiant version of you that fought through the fire alone. Walk in that. Own that. Because becoming unrecognizable to the person who hurt you is the most beautiful sign that you never needed them to be whole in the first place. Sometimes silence is the loudest statement you can make. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is disappear without an explanation. No warning, no final message, no closure, just gone. Because here's the truth. Not everyone deserves the luxury of understanding why you left. Some people only learn when they no longer have access to you. In that absence, that's the lesson. When you stop explaining yourself to people who never really listened, when you stop justifying your worth to someone who never valued it, you shift the power dynamic completely. They were used to your words. They were used to your emotional check-ins, your vulnerability, your "we need to talk" texts. But when you go quiet, when you remove yourself from the drama and the cycle, you force them to sit with themselves. And trust me, silence exposes everything. See, we often think that if we explain enough, they'll finally get it. If we pour our heart out one more time, they'll finally treat us right. But explanations don't change behavior. Boundaries do. Boundaries end is a boundary. It says, I no longer need to be understood by someone who had every chance to hear me. And don't think for a second that disappearing means you're weak or afraid. It means you've outgrown the need to convince someone of your value. You've decided to protect your peace at all costs. You've decided that your energy, your softness, your love, those are not open to just anyone. They're sacred. And when someone misuses that access, the most graceful and divine response is silence. And yes, disappearing hurts because you wanted them to change. You hope they'd wake up and realize who they were losing. But healing doesn't come from their realization. It comes from your decision to stop begging for what should have been given freely. You can't hold on to someone who only values you when they're losing you. And you shouldn't have to. For silence, it haunts them. They'll scroll through old messages. They'll try to reread the last conversation, looking for clues. They'll start questioning why you left, what they missed, how they didn't see it coming. But they saw it. They just didn't think you had the strength to walk away. But you did, quietly, fully, completely. And now they're left with the memory of someone who loved them deeply and left without turning back. Let that be your closure. Let that be your power. You don't need an audience to validate your strength. Disappear, heal, and let your absence speak volumes. You know, the truth is, he expected you to need him. He thought you would fall apart without his presence, like your world would collapse the moment he left. But what he didn't understand is that you were never dependent on him. You were just deeply loyal. You were present. You were committed. And there's a huge difference between depending on someone and choosing to love them fully. He mistook your softness for weakness. He thought your heart made you fragile. He believed that the pain he caused would paralyze you, that you wouldn't know how to move without his validation. But here's what he didn't realize. Every storm you've ever survived before him made you stronger for the day he walked away. You didn't heal because it was easy. You healed because you had no other choice. You got tired of waking up feeling like you weren't enough. You got tired of questioning your worth because someone else couldn't recognize it. You got tired of waiting on an apology that never came or closure that never arrived. So you stopped waiting. You got up. You faced the mirror. And you said to yourself, it's time to move forward. That moment, that's where the shift happened. Healing didn't look like sudden joy. It looked like silence, like turning off your phone at night and sleeping in peace, like going to work and putting your head down and showing up for yourself. It looked like crying in the shower some nights, but not texting him anymore. It looked like starting small routines again, drinking more water, reading more, talking to your friends, letting yourself laugh without guilt. He didn't expect that. He thought you would call, that eventually you'd come back, that after the silence, there'd be a message waiting, I miss you. But the message never came because the healing was happening inside of you in places he never even saw. The parts of you he took for granted were growing in his absence. Let's be honest. He thought he was the center of your story, but he was just a chapter, a necessary one maybe, a painful one definitely, but not the final one. Your healing proved that your story was always bigger than his role in it, and that terrified him. Because now he's watching you glow. He's watching you walk different. Your voice is calmer, your energy more focused. You've created a version of yourself that doesn't beg to be seen. You simply are. And now he's the one haunted, not by your presence, but by your progress. So keep healing, keep rising, keep doing the work, because every step you take forward is a reminder to him of what he lost, and a reminder to yourself of what you gain. Sometimes the most powerful message you can send is silence. It's not a text. It's not a call. It's not a post aimed at him. It's not a long message explaining how he hurt you. No, it's just the absence of your voice, the absence of your energy. That silence, it speaks volumes. Because when someone's used to your constant presence, your sudden quiet becomes the loudest sound they've ever heard. He didn't think you could go silent. He was used to the version of you that reached out first, that made peace first, that apologized. Even when you weren't wrong, you were the one who always showed up, even when he gave you every reason not to. So when you stopped showing up, it shook him. When your name stopped appearing on his phone, he noticed. When you didn't react to his stories, didn't ask how he was doing, didn't check in, something inside him started to ache. Because silence, when it's unexpected, becomes a mirror. It forces someone to see themselves without the distraction of your grace. He may have thought you were ignoring him out of anger, but this silence isn't about him at all. It's about you choosing peace over chaos. It's about you choosing dignity over desperation. You've come to understand that your energy is sacred, and silence is how you protect it when someone has shown they can't value it. See, we've been conditioned to believe that love means always being available, that real love chases, fixes, reaches out. But the truth is, real love also honors space. It knows when to step back. When you're no longer begging for clarity, you're no longer chasing understanding. When you go silent, you're telling the universe, I choose me. And that kind of silence is powerful. He might pretend it doesn't bother him. He may act like he didn't notice, but deep down, it gnaws at him because he expected access. He thought no matter what he did, he could always come back. And when he tries, because eventually he will, you won't even have to say a word. Your silence will have already said everything. It will tell him that you outgrew the pain, that you matured beyond needing explanations, that peace became your priority. and he wasn't part of that peace. So don't break that silence. Don't send the text. Don't give in to the moment of weakness that tells you to check if he still cares. You already know the answer. What matters now is that you care, that you value your own healing more than you value his temporary attention. Your silence is not empty. It's full of power. It's full of grace. It's full of all the self-love you used to pour into someone who didn't know what to do with it. Keep being silent, not to punish him, but to protect yourself. Keep walking forward, not to prove anything to him, but to prove everything to yourself. And when your silence finally brings him back, you won't need to say a word, because by then your peace will be louder than anything he could ever say. There's a moment in your healing journey when you realize the greatest closure you'll ever receive is your own decision to move on. Not a text from him, not an apology, not a late night call where he finally admits he was wrong. No. The most powerful form of closure is when you finally say to yourself, I deserve better, and you start acting like it. He didn't expect you to find that kind of strength without him because, let's be honest, he thought he broke you. He thought the silence he left behind would echo so loud inside you that you'd always be waiting, hoping, wondering, but something happened in the stillness. You didn't fall apart, you found yourself. You didn't stay stuck in the memory of what could have been. You rose up in the reality of what is. And let's not sugarcoat it. He probably thought you'd never stop chasing him, that you'd always be the one trying to fix it, that you'd live with your heart in your hands, waiting for him to finally choose you. But instead, you chose yourself. That's the closure. That's the healing. When you decided to stop reopening wounds just because he decided to show up when it was convenient for him. You stopped waiting for the story to end the way you imagined it, you rewrote it. You stopped needing his validation to know your worth. You stopped needing his response to trust your feelings because you realize something. Closure isn't about getting answers from him. It's about giving peace to yourself. Sometimes we think we need to hear them say, I'm sorry, or I was wrong. But let's be real. Those words, even if they come, don't always heal. Because what you were craving wasn't just his words. It was his consistency, his presence, his respect. And if he didn't offer that while he had you, what makes you think his words will change the pain? The pain, you don't need him to admit what he did to know it wasn't right. You felt the weight of his silence, the sting of his distance, the confusion of his mixed signals. And through all that, you kept showing up for yourself. That's the closure. That's the final chapter. Not the one where he comes back to explain, but the one where you don't even need him to anymore. That kind of healing scares people who thought they had control over your emotions. When they see you smiling again, glowing again, living again, that's when they realize the damage they caused couldn't destroy you. It only revealed your power, your ability to walk away, to rebuild, to love yourself enough to let go. So don't go looking for closure in his inbox. Don't dig through old messages hoping to understand what went wrong. You already know. And more importantly, you've already healed. Not because he fixed it, but because you stopped needing him to. Final chapter isn't about him coming back. It's about you not waiting for him anymore. That's what real peace looks like. That's what healing sounds like. And that, more than anything else, is what he never expected to see. One of the most powerful moments in your healing is when you realize his absence was the gift you never knew you needed. It didn't feel like it at first. At first, it felt like rejection, abandonment, betrayal. You thought his silence was a punishment. You thought him walking away meant something was wrong with you. But with time, you began to understand his absence created the space for your transformation. He thought his absence would leave you broken. He thought you would crumble. He assumed you would spend nights waiting for a message, days questioning your worth. What he didn't expect was that the space he left would become your sacred ground for rebirth. That in his absence, you would discover how full you could be without someone who never valued your presence. Sometimes it's only when someone leaves that you finally hear your own voice clearly. When the noise of chasing love dies down, your intuition speaks up. You start to notice things you ignored. The way you always had to lower your standards. The way your needs were never met unless you begged. The way you were always the one holding it all together. And then it hits you. You were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong person. His absence taught you to pour that same energy back into yourself. To take the love you gave away so freely and return it to its rightful place within. You began investing in your peace, your purpose, your passion. You started looking in the mirror and saying, I am enough, even if he didn't see it. And here's the most unexpected part of it all. Eventually, he'll look back and realize what he lost. Not because you begged, not because you posted quotes online hoping he'd see them, but because you quietly became everything he thought you couldn't be without him. That silent evolution, that's the loudest statement you'll ever make. You didn't just survive his absence, you built an entirely new life from it. And now you're living proof that the right people never leave you confused. They never leave you wondering. And the wrong people, their absence is never the loss. It's the blessing.